Well, hello, hello, beautiful spirits. Welcome to a nice little quick tarot card reading we're going to be doing here. I hope it brings you some joy as we deal with everything that's going on in this crazy world. But before we get started, it would be awesome, possum, if you could like, share, and subscribe as we boldly go where no oracle has gone before 100,000 subscribers. Thank you all for being here. I'm still getting over the weather. I got that horrible bug that goes for a couple of weeks. I will survive, but it's no bueno. You know, the older I get, the more pragmatic I become. And I have found that it is bad for me to watch cable TV because, and I'm moving away from politics because politics has become something where you have to do everything in your power to make sure that the opposing team looks bad, and you stop caring about what's best for the world and you start focusing instead on my political party has to win no matter what because, whatever. And then when you add to that mixture the super PACs and foreign money that's coming in from Qatar and Iran and anybody and everybody else, it becomes this joke where in the middle of all this money and propaganda, you have to try and find the truth to the best of your ability. And what I have found is that nobody's telling the truth, and people are completely clueless about what's going on, and what people know is the propaganda that they have been fed. And then what will also happen is that people will only watch a particular type of news that reinforces their own narrow view of how the world operates. And so they will come onto my channel and they will try to debate me. And a lot of the times they get everything wrong, but they really know Iranian propaganda inside and out. And it just becomes absolutely exhausting. It becomes absolutely exhausting to try and explain Middle Eastern politics to people who have never been to the Middle East, are completely indoctrinated by an extremely narrow worldview. It's just absolutely exhausting. And that's why I think it's really important to travel and listen to people whose worldviews are entirely different than your own, whether it's visiting Israel, the West Bank, Gaza. Iran is not safe right now, but Egypt. What is that like as a white American woman to walk the streets of Cairo without a hijab? What's that experience going to be like for you? Walking through the market, and if you're 22 years old and a pretty blonde girl, like, what's that? I know. I know what that experience is like. So, and those experiences can be can take the range from good to bad to neutral, right? But that's the great thing that happens when you have the opportunity to go and see things for yourself. So, what are some of the things that are going to end when the Iranian government is completely toppled and we see the end of the IRGC, the Iranian Guard? Well, a lot of good things are going to happen when the largest state-sponsored terrorist, the government that has been using their oil money to build armies, proxy armies to kill other people. It can only be good when that happens. Recently, somebody had said to me that the former Shah had been bloodthirsty. Yes, the former Shah was bloodthirsty, but nowhere near as bloodthirsty as the mullahs. And one of the things you also learn when you live in the Middle East is you learn that secular dictatorships have been really good for women in the Middle East, in the sense that Nasser, for example, out of Egypt in the 1950s and 60s, when they, with an iron fist, suppressed primitive ideologies, or what they saw as religious extremist ideologies, and they brought in secular dictators, women started wearing minis and going to education. They're getting an education. So democracy in Egypt is a good example of what can go wrong if you give democracy to people that have strange ideas about women. You give them the right to vote and control. And that's what we saw with the Arab Spring, right? This fight between the old ways and the new ways, and how the Middle East changed when you had secular dictatorships. And those, for example, the life for women improved under Nasser in Egypt. Life for women's rights improved in Syria under the Assad regime, right? Versus ISIS coming in now with the fall of Assad. We now see Druze being massacred, Alawat being massacred as these religious extremists come in, women going into burqa, right? So when you look at it historically, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the Shah in Iran, these were secular dictators that came in to control the crazy. And over time, as those governments stabilized, and education, healthcare, the things that you want to establish to have a functioning society, bringing people into the 21st century, as those governments stabilized, they could have moved more towards democracy. But what we're seeing in countries like, for example, Turkey, which is part of Western Europe, and yet it's a Muslim country, we're seeing again this war between secular dictatorships and religious extremists, and people like Erdogan taking over Turkey, and Turkey being another country, for example, that is moving away from democracy towards religious extremism. And that creates this debate and this discussion with what is better for the Middle East. A military secular dictatorship where the crazies are controlled and women can wear whatever they like because the military is there and everybody gets to have an education? Or do we allow for a democracy that could mean that, does democracy mean the right to oppress the rights of others? I guess that is really the open discussion we can have. Do I have the right, if the majority of people believe that you should be in a burqa, and we vote to force you into burqa and force you into an arranged marriage at 9, is that better because it's the will of the people? Or is it better for the people if you bring in a secular dictator that says nobody has the right to infringe their religious beliefs on the majority, or on women, or any other group? So that's the constant fight you see happening in the Middle East, is the old guard secular dictatorships, which historically were good for women. The Shah was good for it. The Shah advanced the rights of women under those secular dictatorships, as did Saddam Hussein, Nasser out of Egypt, Assad in Syria, right? And when those secular dictatorships collapsed and religious extremists could take control, they immediately took control of women's bodies. And it became a question of which was better, secular dictatorships or religious extremism. But what will most likely happen with the fall of Iran, whether or not it's politically correct to say that here in the West, because we have democracy here in the West, is that the argument appears to be that for the time being, secular dictatorships are better for the people for the women of the Middle East, right? So, and that is something that's really hard if you're born in the West and you're born in a democratic society. It's really hard to wrap your head around that the military is protecting from the crazies, right? We also see that happening right now in Egypt, where leadership in Egypt is struggling, right? If the Middle East is going to change, and if Iran's mullahs are going to collapse, they won't have the ability to fund state-sanctioned terror. Hezbollah in the north will collapse. The Taliban will have trouble without allies funding its wars, attempting to encroach on Pakistani space. And Hamas will go bankrupt, probably. Islamic Brotherhood, which was bringing weapons through Sinai out of Egypt, they were bringing weapons in. So I'm pragmatic in the sense that, when I'm asked about what the people want, most women and most Iranians want a constitutional monarchy. They want a secular dictatorship to come in and build the foundations of what will one day be a democracy. But they don't feel, given the crazy that's happening in the Middle East, that they're there yet. They must first stabilize with a military and build some kind of constitutional democracy that will protect the rights of the citizens. And from that framework, build a democracy. That's kind of, as I understand it, what the Iranian people are saying. Now, if you're talking about trade routes and you're talking about the strait, you're also talking about competition, right? So you have China building new roads in Africa. A lot of criticisms about that because Europe didn't take care of Africa. European involvement in Africa hurt Africa, right? You look at this European scramble of the 1840s, right? Where all these European countries went in and began claiming huge chunks of Africa for themselves. The Belgian Congolese, the British in Nigeria, the Boer War, right? It was all these Europeans that decided that Africa belonged to them, right? So now there's a lot of controversy that China has come in, right, to build the structure that Europe should have built, uniting the continent, right? You have BRICS. So you have all these competitions for trade, and now you have this new trade deal that Trump got credit for, but was probably built for many, many years because of an understanding that the leading country of state-sponsored terrorism needed to go. And that when we did that, we wouldn't have to continue to bomb children in Yemen because the Houthi would be bankrupted. So if the Houthi are bankrupted, they're not going to continue to fire on Saudi Arabia. And then you won't have to have Obama sending drones in that end up killing children, right? Obama won't have to send drones into Afghanistan that kill whole parties. A whole wedding was happening, and 47 people coming back from a wedding got taken out by drones, right? So the other horror of those drone wars was that they weren't even meeting their enemy. They were meeting computers in the sky that were one by one picking off civilians, right? So that all ends when this state-sponsored dictatorship finally comes to an end. This state-sponsored terror comes to an end. So the main reason that to take out Iran is to see an end of the craziness, the funding of all the violence, right? If you want peace between Israel and Palestinians, you have to stop funding terrorism, right? There's a big difference between funding terrorists that engaged in October 7th and funding a country that's trying to defend itself from something like October 7th, and then projecting genocide onto the people, trying to protect themselves after genocide was attempted against them on October 7th, funded by Iran. We also have to look at Qatar. Qatar has also been linked. In the past, it was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was funding the creation of a fundamentalist Islamic mosque all over the world with the intent of bringing Wahhabi Islam to the entire world. So we find ourselves in a pickle. Now, people have said that it's the same in the United States because religious fundamentalists are trying to take control over women's bodies here in the United States, and that's true. There are correlations, and some could argue religious extremism is a mental health disorder, and it lends itself to narcissistic personality disorder in the sense that the most religious fundamentalists are suffering from narcissistic personality cluster B, right? In the sense that they believe they are mouthpieces for God, right? Let's go ahead. We'll do the empath's prayer, and let's take a look at what's going on. Good to see you all here. Okay, I want to call on white light protection for myself in this community as we ask permission from Spirit to access the Akashic records. We call on our spirit guides and our good angels to be with us. Please give us the clarity and the wisdom that is needed to empower all of us on our journeys to make the best decisions for ourselves, our families, the planet, the people we love, but also to help those that we may have strife with. And together collectively, we say Amen. So, Jew hatred, right? Jew hatred. For example, something like 85, 90 something percent of the Pakistanis moving to Britain right now have extremely hostile, stereotypical ideas about the Jews. We know that historically the Jews have been driven from the Middle East, right? This is even before there was an Israel, right? We know that Adolf Hitler was creating alliances with Palestinians through the head mufti of Jerusalem, right? He was flying to Nazi Germany. The Egyptians were having a relationship treaty, trying to develop a relationship with Hitler. Hitler felt that the only way that Nazism was going to survive is if he planted the seeds of Nazism in the Middle East, and that was why Mein Kampf became translated into Arabic. That's why the Nazis are in Egypt. If you've ever seen, what is that movie? I can't even remember the name of it. Harrison Ford. Covenant, the Ark of the Covenant, right? So, Indiana Jones, it's during the Second World War, and the Nazis are in the Middle East creating allies. So those ideas were, heavily adopted because of maybe anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish ideas that had existed prior to Hitler coming in, right? So what happened is there used to be a lot of Jews in Saudi Arabia. There are now no Jews left in Saudi Arabia. There used to be Jews in Algeria. The Jews were driven from Algeria. There used to be Jews in Morocco. 500,000 Jews were kicked out of Morocco. There used to be Jews in Egypt. What happened to them? The Jews of Egypt have been kicked out. What happened to the Jews of Syria, right? So the ethnic cleansing and the genocide was actually happening from those countries. So where did the Jews go? They went to Israel because there was no Muslim country that was a safe place for Jews because of this these relationships that were happening with Hitler, right? So we now find ourselves fast forward in the 21st century. The secular dictatorships have collapsed. Islamic extremism, Shia Islam extremist and Wahhabi Muslim extremist have wreaked havoc on the Middle East, and it's created a lot of terror and unhappiness. And then Israel has to go in and defend herself and if you are just a normal person in the middle of this, Palestinian or otherwise, you wind up in the middle of this big geopolitical disaster. So how will this end? Certainly the desire is to take out state-sponsored terrorism, but it's not going to be enough if nothing gets replaced, if it doesn't get replaced by something better. And that better will for a time be secular dictatorships, right? Until the area becomes stabilized. Will that take 20, 40 years until people are educated, until the poorest of the poor of Iran? This was the mistake of the Shah. The money was too centralized around a bunch of aristocrats in Tehran, and the money didn't get to the poor, the vulnerable on the border with Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the poorest of the poor, hearts and minds weren't changed because the people saw their poverty and their isolation, and that the Shah wasn't doing anything about it. So they clung to religion, and that was the fall of Iran. So going forward, Iran is going to have to think about all Iranians, making sure that all Iranians are granted the same rights that the aristocrats of Tehran were granted, and given the same economic opportunities. Otherwise, there won't be stability in that area, right? So now we have the straits, right? We have the straits and everyone's fighting. Everybody wants the new trade route under the Abraham Accords, but nobody wants to fight for it. So yeah, America, you go die. You go die and give us our trade route. If Mohammed bin Salman out of Saudi Arabia wants this new trade route, he needs to get off his Royal Highness and put his big boy pants on, right? Same with United Arab Emirates. You wanted this. You fought for this. You wanted that new trade route. You wanted Iran to be gone to build the Abraham Accords. Bahrain wanted it. Morocco wanted it. Egypt wanted it. They want that $50 billion rebuild of Gaza. You're going to have to do something for us. You're going to have to get involved and not just sit in the sidelines. So I just want to take a look at the future of the Strait of Hormuz and whether or not we're going to start getting support from our allies who claim that they want peace in the new trade route, but they don't want to fight for it. Lazy. Little royal princes and princesses ready to let somebody else go and do their crap work for them, right? Ever dated somebody like that? All right, let's see how it goes. I have. Spoiled, right? Just used to having other people do the crap for you. So regarding the strait, we have strength and the sun. The other good news is that the lion is Iran. So the symbol of the new Iran is the lion on their flag. So by the summer, we see a strong new Iran. This is Iran's card. I have a different card for different countries. Star is the United States because it's Star-Spangled Banner. The high priestess is Israel. She holds the Torah. She's blue and white. Tell your brain will connect to the cards based on how your brain perceives of the cards. Your brain will work with you. It's not a dogmatic religion, the tarot. It's how you connect with the tarot. So I see the lion of Judah, but I also see the lion of Iran. And you can see that beautiful energy coming in, 2 base cards and the sun. So I'm predicting that the new Iran or Iran will be liberated from the mullahs probably by August. So that's good news. They're already on the ropes, right? Most of their military has been wiped out because they spent years planning. The precision was so developed that they were building drones inside Iran. The Mossad was building drones inside Iran. They had put tags, click, onto the dresses of the bodyguards who were working for the Mossad so that every time an important leader was going anywhere, they were tagging. They had a because everybody was bugged, right? So this is quite auspicious. You can see the time of the sun. When the sun is high, that's August, and we can see the strength card moving in for the lion. Where we are at right now, the first house is dreaming, Queen of Cups. We're not quite sure how this is going to play out. Are we going to get some help here or not? You signed that peace deal with Donald Trump, right? You all shook his hand, right? So if you all shook Trump's hand, where's the love, right? Where's the love? No honey, no money. Right? So we look at what happened with the Trump in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, right? We had the peace shaking hands, right? And all of them thought it was a great idea. They loved this new trade route. They loved the new trade route because by signing of this new route, it worked great for them. They were going to make money. They were going to get rich. Beautiful, bueno, right? But the problem with that is that they're not wanting to pay for. They want the money. They want the new trade route, but we don't want to send troops, and this becomes the problem. Where are they? That's what Trump is asking, right? So Trump's question is, where are you guys? Where are you? I think that new trade route is fantastic. Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Money, 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 money. A lot of cash. A lot of cash, right? So they're seeing what's coming. They're seeing that new trade route. I'm going to make $1 billion. Everybody there is happy. They're in Sharm el-Sheikh because they've all said, well, we will be a part of this new peace, this new trade deal. We think it's awesome possum, because it's unlimited cash, right? Muy dinero, mucho money, and everybody's involved. Look at him over there. There's the big money man who's building that trade route. He's building that loop-de-loop all the way from United Arab Emirates to the new Gaza. There he is, the man of the hour. Dun, 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 dun. You still haven't paid me for my research hours. Okay. So that is where we are at, right? So we got a pickle. So first house is like the Queen of Cups. It's kind of dreaming, but it doesn't have any kind of necessarily action. Interesting that the crossing card is a 10 of Pentacles over the Strait of Hormuz in the war, because that can be family dynamics or family history, probably because there's family history about our various different relationships with each other. History with the Jews, history with the non-believing Christians, history with the trade, right? The trade, Turkey's trade with Iran, right? The Ottoman Empire, the fact that Turkey and Russia and Iran have been trade partners since the beginning of that's where they share borders, right? They share water. So they're always going to be thinking in terms of trade. So you have this ancestral issue that you may have to be going against normal trade routes in order to create a new trade route. We have this also beautiful energy moving in where the boat is leaving the rough waters and it's entering into smooth sailing without obstruction. And that tells me that the straits are going to open up fairly soon. What we're sitting in is Two of Swords, a refusal to cooperate. What we're coming out of is the wish has been granted because the fall is finally happening and we're entering into more conflict or fighting. I feel like there's going to be minimal fighting in the Strait of Hormuz because I don't think the Iranian government ever had a working military. I don't think that they invested in their military. They invested in having other people go out and kill for them. They invested in building up Hezbollah in Lebanon and pouring a bunch of money, but they didn't anticipate that anybody was going to be fighting on Iranian soil. They built up the Taliban to terrorize and make life hell for the women there, bribing the Pakistani government to try and make sure that high-ranking members of the military were in their pocket, right? That was how they were able to hide Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, right? So we are seeing some fighting as they continue to keep that trade route open. But for the most part, we also have some confusion right now. Where are our allies? Do you want this or not? Do you want the money or not? So there has to be some kind of peacekeeping troop. Also concern about the loyalties, right? Infidelity or loyalties. When you shook hands in Sharm el-Sheikh, were you serious about this? And then we have strong leadership coming in as well. I think the Shah will rule in Iran. I think that we will see very likely this coming to an end right around August. There are rumors that the new Shah has been seriously wounded. He's not liked much by his father. He evidently had a lot of challenges, impotency, homosexuality also, which was shunned in his culture. Many people think he might not be alive. He was most certainly, injured. The new head of Iran was injured when a bomb exploded at a major meeting of the mullahs, IRGC, Iranian leadership. It took out the Ayatollah along with a bunch of other people from the cabinet, killed members of the new Khamenei's family. I believe his family was killed, but he himself evidently is in an ICU. Let's take a look. He is contained or controlled. He's under kind of a house arrest. He cannot leave. So either he could be in a hospital or some kind of confinement where they have made him a figurehead, but he is not able to leave. So it's like a hospital, but it also appears to be like a prison. There's a new beginning happening sometime in spring. He's not allowed to go into public. Hopes and fears. New jobs, new money, who will do the job, and then the sun coming out. It ends in August. New leadership for Iran in August. People have asked me if Netanyahu is dead. That's a false story that came out of Iran because Tehran is being wiped off the map, and much of Iranian leadership has been wiped out. However, Israel has done fairly well. There have been a couple of hits with some of these ballistic missiles, but thank God, not a lot of people have been harmed. I'm Israeli American. I communicate with Israel all day long, every day. We had some stuff happening in the north. I think there was some shrapnel that fell in Jerusalem. But Iron Dome has been able to knock out most of those missiles. Most Israelis are tired because we keep having to go into the bomb shelters. But no, Netanyahu is not dead. That's a false rumor. And if you continue to promote that rumor, you know that you are promoting Iranian propaganda. And there's a lot of Iranian propaganda that gets spread through these types of channels. We're here strictly as for entertainment purposes only. But no, Netanyahu is very much alive. Jerusalem is doing great. People were out today in Jerusalem enjoying the sun. It was a nice day. People are getting ready for Passover. People, of course, have to stay close to the bomb shelters. If we get an alert, then we have to go into the bomb shelters. But there are less and less missiles every day, and that's because the rocket launchers coming out of Iran have been blown up. Now, there are some rockets in the north that are coming in from Hezbollah. Hezbollah, again, is a proxy army that's attempted to take over Lebanon, that was funded by Iran, terrorizing the people of Lebanon, killing Christians in Lebanon, just as Christians are being murdered in Nigeria, murdered in Egypt by these extremist groups funded with foreign money, right? So let's just take a look at how Israel is doing and if they're going to be okay. Prayer, lots of prayer going on in Israel. So you can see the Hierophants staying close to the Godhead. So you can be sure people are praying a lot. They're praying for their safety. Their house of opposition, there's a new beginning in Iran. They're building something new. And the hope and the fear at this time, the health and the healing of the nation. And the final outcome for Israel is be patient. That changes will happen in Israel. It's a better Israel. It's a better Gaza. It's a better Palestine. It will take time. Once the terrorist, all this terrorism, Hamas also was an Iranian proxy army that took over Gaza, terrorized the people of Gaza. So be patient. God and leadership. There we go, with the emperor in the 7th house. House of opposition, stressing out, they're losing. April is big right now. According to these Akashic records, April is going to be really big in this war. And the final outcome is a new beginning and power sitting with Israel. Israel will become stronger, will be able to take control because the weapons will no longer be coming in. And that means that restrictions can be loosened and we can begin to make realistic goals towards a two-state solution, which, or at the least, unity of some type, right? We want unity and integration for all the citizens in that area. And I just want to check and see if Netanyahu is going to be leaving. We know that Naftali Bennett, who is also right, but he's more of a pragmatist. He wants the religious to serve in the military, but it's just two right candidates up against each other. Benny Gantz has lost support. He left the war cabinet, and we're not looking at blue and white unity taking over. They've been steadily declining. But let's see what the future of Netanyahu holds. Netanyahu. Dreaming. His house of opposition, it's over. Transformation of the house of opposition. Hopes and fears, he gets his wish. And then the final outcome for him, he refuses to leave or cooperate. So he's rather stubborn. He's always delaying. Oh, we have another emergency. We can't vote. We're at war. I'm seeing a new contract or a new opportunity for him with a new contract. It could also be evidence against him. He's currently under investigation. He's facing criminal charges for corruption. Some major change or some new contract happening for him in the spring. Hopes and fears. In a way, he has hopes and fears of Trump. So he's a little concerned about the instability of Donald Trump, and he is contained. So the outcome will be lack of cooperation. He feels that he has the ability to control Trump, that Trump is a live wire. There's this feeling, how can I control? He does not want to lose control over the Abraham Accords, lose control over Trump in the middle of all of this. It really feels to me like Netanyahu desires to control Trump and fears that Trump is a loose cannon that he cannot control. And I'm seeing a slow, steady loss of control by Netanyahu, which is kind of interesting as he becomes increasingly controlled and fears this power of Trump. Interesting. All right. Other thing that people wanted me to take a look at had to do, overall, when will there be peace in the Middle East, and when will they start building the new Gaza, etc. I think I'm just going to look at Trump's future and see about Trump. A lot of stuff got exposed a couple months ago. He's lost a lot of support with MAGA because they don't want to be in foreign wars. And so that could be a problem for him. Let's look at the future. Let's do a blitz on Trump's future. And the first card for Trump, where he's at right now, is Alzheimer's again. That 7 of Cups, pipe dreams, right? Smoking that pipe. Delusional. Really, what has me concerned about his cards is the fact that Donald Trump often presents as suffering from some kind of mental delusion or possibly Alzheimer's or fragmented. His mental capacities seem fragmented. That's the best way to describe it. He doesn't always know what he's doing. It's a terrifying disease, Alzheimer's, prefrontal dementia. His opposition wants to help. So his opposition would be the Democratic Party, social programs, making sure that there's health care for the needy and the poor, etc. So his opposition is the Six of Pentacles. He has not been good when it comes to protecting the needs of vulnerable Americans. His hopes and fears, Ace of Cups. This is kind of like his relationship with the divine, the love of God, the love of others, getting redemption. I think he truly fears at night that he's going to hell. And the final outcome for him, health crisis. Archangel Raphael is associated with the cups of healing. It's a child's card sometimes, if you're asking about a baby. If you're not, it can be an LGBTQ member with the pink tights, right? It can be trans, but if you're just asking in general, messengers come from the Hebrew word malachim. Messengers and angels both have the same Hebrew word, malachim. A messenger and an angel are one and the same. Look at the story of Lot in the Bible, where the messengers came and they looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and then they began to walk towards Sodom and Gomorrah. And because they were angels, they were very beautiful. So the town people all came out. Oh, hey, who's the good-looking strangers, right? So all of that is associated with the Hebrew word malach, or angel, and also messenger. So when we talk about pages, we're talking about messengers. And we know that there are 4 archangels that we focus on in the tarot. And Raphael is the archangel associated with the healing waters. So and that lovely omega-3 fish is floating in there. Interesting story about the fish. It's the head of a fish is often served on Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year's, and the fish is considered a symbol of wisdom, that you learn, that you have wisdom in the year. I keep getting this feeling when I go into the energy on Donald Trump that he has some kind of spiritual awakening. It's not entirely fake. He is starting to be scared enough that he is beginning to hope that maybe these prayers can help. Like, a desperate person will do desperate things. If you're happy, if you're rich, if your body's in good shape, if you're young and you got a different woman every night, then who needs God, man? It's like, to heck with that. I'm having a great time in my debauchery. But what do you do when your body falls apart? What do you do when women aren't looking at you the same way? When they're trying to get away from you. Maybe they think you smell weird or you look weird, or all of a sudden you don't have the same power you had when you were younger, when you didn't need God. And so now all of a sudden you find yourself desperately trying to find something that's going to save you. But the Hierophant is over him. So he may be wondering, am I going to go to heaven? I will just believe in Jesus. It's going to be that simple. I might give it a try. Right. So I'm saved. I pray. This kind of running to the church or running to some kind of spiritual path for fear that something horrible is going to happen. There's genuine grief on the part of the Democrats, I feel, because of compassion. I feel this tremendous amount of compassion coming from the Democratic Party, and we want the compassion to be directed in ways that are going to be constructive. We may have unbelievable compassion for somebody in our family who has abused us, right? Maybe they're a narcissist, maybe they lied, they steal, they cheated, and we do have compassion. But with that compassion, you have to have boundaries, and you have to protect yourself first and foremost. The 5 of Cups comes over the Democrats. Real grief, like, oh my God, you have slashed funding for people to buy food. We're running out of food at the places that hand out food, right? So you have these food banks that don't have any food in them. I watch videos all day long on YouTube of mentally ill and sick seniors freezing to death in the snow. If this country is so rich, we all should be ashamed of ourselves that we would ever let a senior be in that situation. Shame on us as a nation. And if we think we're not going to pay for it, we will 100% pay for it. So there is this grief when we see that, and we must come together. I don't give a damn what your religion is. I don't care what political party. I don't care about all that shit. What, pardon my French, what are you doing to make sure that no American, those who suffer from chronic mental illness, those who suffer, who physically suffer, we will be judged by how we treated the least among us. And so you can see this real suffering and grief associated with care for the needy and justice for the needy and the vulnerable. I love the Six of Pentacles. It's a number 6, which is salt of the earth if you're looking at numerology. But also Six of Pentacles is about giving to the needy and balancing that which is unjust. People don't ask to be mentally ill. People don't ask to be tortured and abused and all the horrible things that can happen to someone when they have a nervous breakdown, get sick and lose their home. Nobody chooses that, right? So our redemption is in love and through love, right? Isn't that what Viktor Frankl said? The hope and the fear of Trump, the salvation, again, this Ace of Cups. Look at this juxtaposition over Trump. Salvation through Christ or God, and this mental confusion, this Seven of Cups with this Page of Cups. Like, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, right? And the hope and the fear. Oh, he fears presidents who were more popular than he is. Well, what about Joe? Joe didn't do that. Yeah, but we really love Joe. What do you love him for? I'm better than he is. What do you love JD? What do you love him for? I'm just as good. There's this kind of energy you also get here of competition or fear of the other or fear of Mr. Popular, the other guy, the king of hearts, the other guy who is popular. This desire by Trump, a feeling like he is always competing with the pretty one. He's always competing with the popular guy. There is a breaking point with Donald Trump where, because he is mentally unfit, he is not fit as president to be he's not fit to be the president in wartime, right? Maybe they could have covered for his mental deficits when everything is easy breezy, right? He only has to go and do a press conference for 15, 20 minutes and make some jokes, etc. But it's becoming increasingly difficult for this president to serve during wartime. And we're also starting to see just conflict in his cabinet, because Five of Wands is over it. There's real war and conflict. The stress of the job and the stress of the war is deleterious to his health. It's bad for his health. And it could be one of the things that forces him to have to step down, because it seems to be having a negative impact on his mental health. I also think that Democrats have to be very, very specific about every single thing we want. I've been hearing a lot of young people, particularly young women, talk about how it's exactly the same and how we're religious Christian fundamentalists in America are. Well, yes, there are Christian religious fundamentalists that we need to control for, because they also want to control women's bodies. And it is a form of cluster B, narcissistic personality disorder. When you're a religious extremist, you start to think you're a mouthpiece for God. And then the first thing you try to do is control women, right? That seems to be what they all share. However, we also want to respect our elders in the feminist movement. We want to think about Elizabeth Stratton and Susan B. Anthony and all of the other activists that have been involved in granting us the rights that we have as women, fighting for equal pay, fighting for all of the rights that we enjoy as women in the West. And when we make laissez-faire comments like that, that it's the same in Afghanistan right now under the Taliban, where you're only allowed to show one eye and you're not allowed to read or write. That's what happened to slaves in the United States, right? Weren't allowed to read or write. That's like saying it's the same for Black people today as it was in 1865. It's not to honor those people who sacrificed and gave up their lives and did the fighting and dying so that people could be free, right? We have the same thing happening globally. It's not the same. Yes, there are religious extremists that are trying to strip women of their rights, and we've lost some rights. We lost Roe v. Wade, but it's a completely different ballpark, right? It's not the same, and we want to honor and give gratitude to those people who sacrificed so much to improve human rights in the United States. We still have a lot more to do. We're not Sweden, right? We're not Iceland when it comes to women's rights. Those are countries that, have the highest standards for women's rights. We're not Iceland yet. We aspire to do more, but we are also not 147 out of 147 for women's rights. Yeah, so Trump eventually steps down because the stress of the war and everything else takes a toll on his health, and for that reason, he will not be able to continue. That's how I interpreted those cards. The last thing that I was asked to talk about had to do with the bad weather. As I had said, 6 more weeks of winter, as I had gone into the energy and I had followed all the way up into that cold front, all the way into the Northeast, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Montreal, Toronto, New York, all along that area, I had felt blizzards up until March. And in fact, that's what we're seeing, is that those horrible blizzards, those horrible winds. The other thing that I had predicted and felt as I had gone into the energy over the weather is that as time goes by, we will see winds increasing. The winds are coming. 100-mile winds, cars getting picked up and carried. I had a vision that the winds over the earth would increase. It could potentially harm topsoil, and that the winds are very, very dangerous, right? The winds are very, very dangerous. Let's see about the future of the weather in the United States. And then I'll do a quick one on the economy. I know people are worried. There's a lot of fears. We have not seen much economic growth. But let me just do one quick on the weather. Sorry, y'all, that are stuck in the middle of this. It just sounds absolutely dreadful. If you could like, share, and subscribe to the stream, I would be ever so grateful to all of you. I know it's just been terrible. I heard Wyoming had 100-mile-an-hour winds. Those winds that hit the Midwest, I've never felt wind like that before. When I go into meditations, and then I started seeing it the last couple of years. The winds are getting bigger and bigger and stronger. And I'm just, Knight of Swords, by the way, if you're asking about angry, violent wind storms, ice, but wind that will just bull in a china shop, that is the Knight of Swords. Knight of Swords, of course, is associated with air and ether and the air signs. Violent air energy can also be a virus that attacks the lungs. We can think about when we think about the Knight of Wands. That had me nervous, and I'd been seeing that a lot in the cards. The weather sucks, I know. Beautiful in Jerusalem right now, though. A lot of people are out and about. It was not AI. I know people that were out and about, and no, Jerusalem is very beautiful right now. The Prime Minister is alive and well. I know you don't like Netanyahu, and I'm not a fan either, but he is not dead. Okay, regarding issues, I feel like there's this plummeting of the earth, and now I feel the wind more than anything. I'm feeling this kind of wind energy. Stay close. Hunker down. This is the time to really hunker down and take care of yourselves. Hierophant moving into 7th position. That would tell me just take care of yourself. Your opposition, 4 of Swords, desire to be still, hopes and fours, use good judgment in the coming weeks. Final outcome, High Priestess, we should be fine. We should be fine, excuse me. But the main challenge at this time feels to me to be flooding and wind. Flooding and wind. Other thing is I'm starting to see old buildings crumbling, particularly on the East Coast. I'm concerned about, I'll be very specific here about what I'm seeing. Massachusetts, if you have old buildings that are, the cement is starting to, and the stone is starting to break down and erode, acid rain, age, wind, freezing, heat, shrinking, all the changes that happened that can cause cracks. I'm starting to see some serious loss of property. Old churches, just erosion and changes happening. I just see old buildings, excuse me, all over New England. We could be seeing a loss of some of those old structures out of New England. That would be Massachusetts, Connecticut. That area looks really vulnerable to wet, rain, wind, and erosion of old, old buildings, right? So historical landmarks, right? So I'm feeling like we could be seeing a loss. I'm right over Boston. I feel like Boston, protect your historical landmarks. The harsh wind could be a challenge in the coming days, and bad weather. Yeah. All right. One quick one on the economy. Will we be okay with the economy? This is fun. All right. The economy in the coming months. Yeah, pretty good. High Priestess moving in, which so more jobs moving in, excuse me, for academics, intellectuals, opposition, there it is. More money getting released as well from the government, possibly to hire more people through the government. Hopes and fears, frugality. I'm seeing more government jobs opening up. That's good. That maybe they had pulled back too far and now they're going to start hiring again because of this juxtaposition here, the hope and fear. But you can see that Seven of Pentacles taking in more money. Academics, there's work for you if you have an education. And Knight of Cups, more opportunity. Slow, steady return of the job market with some stabilization happening by summer of 2026 is what I'm seeing. And back to normal within 1 year. I can't guarantee Trump will be here just because every time I've gone into his cards, it keeps showing images of him waning, his health waning, him not able to continue on. And here again, sun coming out, summertime, High Priestess, first people to get jobs will be the educated. Strong female energy. I feel like we're already ready to take the House. It's only one seat or something. And GOP is dropping like flies. Hard to get mega enthusiastic about a foreign war. That Queen of Wands, man, that's the House of Opposition. That's Oshun. That's a strong, fiery woman, often Aries, Leo, Sag, coming in to take control over the money. And then here again, Two of Cups, new contracts over issues of frugality. And you can see here, I read swords as a 1 year period. We have a 1 year period. Positive, winning, Ace of Swords, and opportunities. Good news about those cards is we're seeing an increase in jobs at the federal level. So that's really great. And probably House and Senate falling to the Democrats because I'm just not feeling with those cards any enthusiasm whatsoever from MAGA. I feel MAGA is broken, it's crippled, and depressed about everything that's going on. The Jeffrey Epstein thing, the Sasha Riley Barros, when that came out, that hit hard with a lot of male MAGA. I read the comments because Sasha Barros is on Facebook threads and he talks, and you have all these male MAGA, just they cannot suffer the idea of child abuse, pedophilia, and particularly when it's a guy, another guy, and he's an Iraq war veteran and hero. It's pretty hard to call him a liar, right? So there are deep, deep, deep cracks that are happening that have knocked the wind out of the sail of the GOP. And for that reason, it just looks like Trump is sick, that the wind is out of his sail. And something major is happening also between now and August, September. It almost feels like a transition into J.D. Vance kind of energy, because I keep getting that King of Pentacles, which is J.D. Vance, and I keep feeling like this slow waning and phasing out of Trump as he goes into kind of a delusion or a delusional spiral. That's kind of what it looks like. All right, be patient. Slow turnaround on the economy, slow and steady wins the race, with jobs finally opening up sometime around August. We're going to start seeing a little bit of growth now, but definitely we're in a new road between August and the end of the year as jobs slowly begin to return. And something going on with Trump where health has become an increasing challenge. It almost feels to me as if J.D. Vance has to do more and more international travel representing the administration as Americans slowly adapt to this idea. It almost feels like two presidents. That's the best way for me to describe it as a remote viewer, so that people can get used to the possibility of a transition. Yeah. Wow, really interesting cards today. Thank you, everyone, for spending a little time with me. If you're trying to get in for a reading, you can find all that information below this video. Be kind to all so that all will be kind to you too. God bless. Peace out. We'll see you next time. Love you guys. Thanks for everything. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe. We're so close to 100K. All right, bye.